Well, why don't we get started? We'll probably have a few more coming on board. My job here is to introduce Titus Talent Strategies, Jonathan and Scott. Some of you will know them. Some of you will come to know them. I've worked with them for years. Some of my clients have worked with them. It's a pleasure. They do a very professional job. The importance of doing something like this is some economists believe we're in the recovery phase. A lot of my customers are. One of the sightings they had was factory utilization for steel production has gone from 50% last May to currently about 75%. And I know there's some steel shortages and price increases, so some people may not even believe that number. Jobs are recovering. If you recall, the job growth cycle in 2009 took 3 years to come back. Now it's about 6 months to do the same thing. Unemployment in Wisconsin is down to 5.5% and declining as of December. And the majority of our work population, or a good share of our work population, are Gen Z and millennials, which make up about 41% of the Wisconsin population right now. Combining that is wage growth is accelerating. It was about 3%. The last number I saw was about 7.5%. Titus Talent helps you find and retain the right people. Just briefly, Jonathan is the CEO of Titus Talent. Only thing I'm going to comment is he's probably got some fun stories in a British accent, which makes him sound authentic. And Scott Seefeld has grown a couple companies into Inc.'s fastest growing list. And I'll let him brag a little bit about Titus when he gets there. So I think, Jonathan, you're going to start this off.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Greg. It's good to be here. And thanks everyone for showing up today. Just a bit of housekeeping. We'd love this to be interactive, love to sit with each of you over a coffee and navigate some of the talent challenges and ways of attracting, hiring, engaging, and developing, getting all the people in the right, pointing in the right direction. But as interactive as we can make this, if you would like to, the little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, it won't go public, so you can send this message private, one of our administrative support team, Hannah, is actually going to be navigating and pulling those questions in. We'll have a chance for Q&A at the end. And if there are live questions in there as well, pop it up. That's totally fine. We can maybe answer on the spot. But so please do get your questions answered. Want to make sure that you're equipped today. The reason we want to make sure you're equipped is that's why we exist, to equip companies to make the best attraction, hiring, engagement, and development decisions, so that you can get you meet your people and performance objectives. Every one of your businesses have some type of a goal in mind that you want to achieve, and it's going to take people to get it done. Whether they're pushing buttons of machinery or on the front lines and selling or whatever it is, it's all about getting the right people on the bus and the right people in the right seats. But the big question we get is, how do I know if I've got the right person in the right seat? We stop for a second to say, let's define the seat. Let's define what that seat requirements are. What are the performance goals and objectives for us to work out if we even have the right seat defined? So one of the great videos, movies of my time, I love the movie Gladiator. Can you believe it's 20 years old? Yes, it was 20 years ago, 21 years ago this movie came out. But this picture here of the emperor when he does the thumbs up, thumbs down, if you remember the scenes of kind of, should they kill the person or not? It's kind of, I laugh at this because I see so many hiring leaders doing the same process when it comes to hiring. It's kind of like, hey, how did the interview go? Fit, not fit? And we kind of do this, yeah, not a fit. And we just move on and we go, what was that? How the heck did you say fit or not a fit? What was the scorecard? What was your process to determine that wasn't a fit? So I recognize that with a shocking number of hires failing in the first year, that we have a problem. But more on the problem, Scott Seefeld is the man who knows problems. No, we've worked together for the last 11 years, and he's got an amazing sight for just some of these details of working out what's going on in the data and what it explains. Over to you, Scott.
Thanks, Jonathan. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. I want to take just a few minutes to set the stage on why this is such an important topic. The data that you're going to see today it's not our data, it's from well-known organizations. So This stat probably doesn't surprise anyone. The next stat, 79%. This is essentially 79% potential turnover. That shocked me. I was really, really surprised. So we need to ask ourselves, is our job profile truly superior? And that really hits on two things as hiring executives that we need to be concerned about. One is recruiting, and the other is retention. So this can be huge disruption, potential turnover, big dollars. It's a big issue. 53% say that career pathing is both critical to not just employees, but also candidates. So again, this hits both recruiting and retention. We're going to touch upon, Greg touched upon the changing and evolving workforce. We're going to touch upon that too. And this plays very much a factor with the changing workforce. I believe this slide applies to all hires, not just executives. We need to ask ourselves, do we have a recruiting process followed by all? And if you don't worry, we're going to share the hire for performance. That's our process. We're going to share that with you shortly. We've had an increase of 88% since 2010 of voluntary turnover. That's just an amazing stat. The supply and demand stat is equally as amazing. The orange or yellowish orange is the unemployment. And then the job openings, it's actually inversed here a little bit, where actually the unemployment is lower than the job openings. And so that really defines the challenge that we have today. And the challenge is we have a lot of baby boomers that are retiring. And with an increase and improvement in the job economy, which Greg shared with us, it's really going to be tough finding top talent. So one of the things we need to consider in looking at top talent is what are the values by generation? So we'll kind of cruise through this, but what do baby boomers care about? Security, significance, the millennials, freedom, and purpose. And this is a good segue into our next slide, which talks about average job tenure. The baby boomers are 7, and as you continue, you'll see that is projected to go to less than 1. That is a huge shift in just 2 or 3 generations. So what is happening is if you think about what's important to the generation, so if you're trying to hire millennials into the same job as a retiring baby boomer with good pay and benefits, but there's no flexibility nor career pathing, that is going to be a challenge. Mm-hmm. So we need to think about these things as we're recruiting. And we'll talk more about that. I'm going to shift it back to Jonathan, who's going to share some quick thoughts and describe our hire for performance process.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that fascinates me, thanks, Scott, is just the shifting times that we're in. When you see the different generations' tenure, job tenure, on average, it's shocking to me, but the trend of where it's going, it makes me say, okay, where do we need to adapt as employers, as leaders, executive, as managers of people? How do I need to adapt with the changing generation? When Greg said 41% millennials and Gen Z, it's going to keep going that direction, right? And then we've got the new generations coming through, the kids of those 2 generations, which, don't worry, they've not hit the workforce yet. But the shift that's happening, we're having to prepare for this whole sense of gig employment. This stat here around gig employment, you think, what? I don't understand that. Meaning people are saying that I have some kind of supplemental employment or income. And many of those individuals would say, if I can actually, because I value freedom and purpose, they find that in doing their own work, whether it be some type of the shared economy, whether they're Uber drivers or Airbnb, and they have some type of flexible income, or they have something on the side which is bringing in income. They say, I would replace my salaried or my full-time job with my own deal, my own gig, if I could provide myself with benefits and steady income. So that shift is happening with an understanding of the younger generation. Get ready, get ready, get ready. I see these are two different Pope inaugurations. It's the same picture, just the shift in an 8-year period. I think this the technology behind things. Yeah, we understand technology, but what's acceptable is what I'm getting at here. Like, oh, put your camera down. Put your camera down. We don't do that. Like, no, it's totally acceptable right now. That the norm. It's not just that there was no technology back in 2005, but what is norm? And so, many of you remember Blockbusters and spending your Friday nights with your young kids at a Blockbuster, perusing through the DVDs and the videos. And then finding out that it wasn't returned and all the drama that went along with that. Netflix shows up on the scene with the DVD mailing in system. Netflix goes down to Blockbuster's headquarters and says, we have this great system here. It's all online, but you can choose your movies and we'll we'll ship them to people and then they return them. And they say, we'll sell you this whole concept. And once the internet is caught up, people will be streaming movies. It is really, really valuable. And they offered to sell to Blockbuster for $50 million. And they were laughed out of the room because Blockbuster said, we do not want to give up the major revenue stream of late fees. Late fees were the thing that held them up, saying, we don't want to give that up. And they didn't see the future. They didn't adapt for the future. And I constantly remind myself of how am I reaching into the future in the fast growing company. We've grown 25% in the last couple of months as an organization. Massively thankful for that. But I carry around in my wallet. Yes, I have my own Blockbuster video card. I carry it in my wallet with me as a reminder to adapt or die. Reach into the future. And we're showing you here that the generations are changing. The way they think are changing. Gig employment is changing. You really need to define your seats. So many companies have just a rubbish process. I saw this video. It made me laugh so hard. This security guard, probably at Miller Stadium, and it's just kind of this really funny pictorial of the screening process of waving a hand. You know, it's almost like magic. That is not a good process. You've got to measure what really matters. And we would define quality as performance. We asked, and through the Society of Human Resource Management, we asked, how do you measure quality? And these are the things that came back. 90% people had retention as one of their measurements. Retention. So we're saying everyone who you retain is a quality employee. I think not. 85% said performance reviews is one of the ways they do it. 50% said manager satisfaction, which is a very, very loose term. And 10% had performance as a measurement of quality. That is backwards. So it's one of the reasons why we created the hire for performance methodology to get the right person in the right seat, which is essentially this. Every opportunity, no matter what it is a great opportunity. I know we don't all believe that, but it's a great opportunity for someone. For someone. It's just not always a great opportunity for the person we think we want, because A players make career moves differently than B's and C's. So defining the job, we call that phase 1, the launch. Phase 2, the hunt. How am I going to attract an A player? Phase 3, how am I going to evaluate and assess that individual and engage them into the process? And then how do I really close them and bring them on board into my organization? So we started asking ourselves the question of, why do we hire people? Which is a funny question, isn't it? Why do we hire people? I remember sitting with our leadership team a number of years back, and I asked the question, and we started whiteboarding why we hire people. But essentially, it's to get a job done. That's why we go to some kind of an approval process of opening up a new seat in our organization or a new requisition. Somebody has to justify why we're hiring that person. And sadly, we don't really define what the job is by getting the job done. What would success look like in it? So Part of our process here is the replacing the job description, which are usually kind of a list of duties and education and experiences that we want. We replace that with, what does success look like? What does performance look like? How would we determine in 1 year's time if the person was an A player? How would we determine whether they even got the job done? Well, what is the job? What are we going to hold them accountable for? So very, very simply and high level, ask yourselves that question. Let's assume that everybody here has an open position in their organization. What would make you say that was a great hire by what they have done quantifiably? And then how are you going to measure that? How would we measure whether that got done or not? So strong employee value proposition is next. Why would an A player who is valued and engaged and enjoying their job at another organization want to leave that organization and join your organization for this particular job? And the secret here is this: A players don't make a move just because you have potluck on Thursdays and you've got a lovely family culture. That's not why A players make moves. A players are very, very different in the way they make career moves. And one of the reasons, well, there are three things that we found over the last 10 years, and we hired thousands of people. Last year alone, in 2020, we hired 1,127 people for our partners around the world. But 1,120 hires just last year alone. We've been doing this for the last 10 years. We started with Milwaukee Tool 10 years ago. We still work with them today. And we have a lot of data on this. A players, the ones who accomplish the jobs, when they make a career move, they can see that it's a bigger job. There's a stretch there for them. And so it's about a 10 to 20% bigger job than they're doing right now. Next is they can see that when I get that job done in 12 to 18 months, I can see what's next for me. Remember when Scott shared that stat that 53% of people remain in their role when they see there's a clear career path for them. So if you want to not only attract an A player, you have to show clear career path. If you want to retain A players, you better show them a clear career path. Because if not, I'm coming for your A players. I'm coming for them. And guess what I'm going to say? Hey, would you be open to making a career move if it was truly superior? That's what our team are trained to do. And they get an 80% or 79% yes answer to that. Sure, I would consider it. And then we ask them next, what would be truly superior? What's next? And when they tell our recruiting team what's next, then we try and match that with what our client's opportunity is. Okay, the what's next is really, really important. The reason it's really important is this. Most companies, when they're desperate and they're pushed into the corner and somebody comes and says, I'm resigning, and they're an A player, they go, what can we do to keep you? And usually we'll throw some money at that. We'll match or we'll exceed what they're offering. These things here are very difficult for companies to suddenly come up with on the spot. Writing a rebound check to get a retention check is a lot easier than coming up with stretch, growth, and impact. So that third one is impact. The A player needs to be able to articulate how, by taking this new position, how will they make an impact on your organization, and how will your organization make an impact on them? It can mean lots of different things, but impact is really, really important, because when they get the counter offer or the counter story, it's very difficult for companies to do this and really craft that in that very moment. So when we look at our organization, we try to map this for every team member. But if you're thinking, well, how am I going to do that? Start with your A players. Start with your people. Wow, if we lost that person, we have such a huge cult. Very difficult to replace that individual. If that's the case, you need to make sure that they can see what's the next challenge or what's the current challenge. There's a challenge involved. They can see what's next for them, and they can see the impact on them and on the organization by them sitting there. So this is a very important concept for both hiring and engagement. And so this is a big aha for hiring leaders, because they all want somebody who requires zero training, that they've done the job many times over, and they're plug and play, and they're awesome. But that's not how A players make career moves. They don't tend to do exactly the same thing that they've done time and time again. So I'm going to give you a few more concepts here, and then I'm going to hand over to Scott here. But you've got to avoid this whole post and pray. Thinking, okay, great, here's the job description, so I'll just stick it out there, and then I'll wait for these amazing applicants to apply. Okay, there is nothing wrong with applicants. But the question is, where are all of the best people for this job? They're working somewhere else. The pool is way, way greater. 79% of the workforce saying I would consider a career move if it was truly superior. Those are the ones you need to tap on their shoulder on. The 21% who are actively looking, they are not bad. It's just a different pool. And so you need to focus on the top performers. So zoom back out again. If you're going to increase your quality of hire, you need to understand people. There are a lot more to people than the resume. We get all lathered up and excited about resumes, or LinkedIn profiles, because we get excited about what the person knows and what they bring by way of experience. But we would say that's about a third of the equation. We hire people for what they know, and then we fire them for who they are. Okay, and we've already proven statistically there's a lot of poor hiring practices and processes out there when it comes to hiring A players. Understand that there are the other 2/3, the head, the heart, the briefcase. The head is all about behaviors and cognitive. How does that person behave in the work environment when the pressure is on and the pressure is off? We talk about use a valid psychometric assessment. We happen to be a predictive index partner. So we're a certified predictive index partner. We're one of their fastest growing in the nation. So we have a whole team that just helps companies around their people strategy. So we implement the predictive index at organizations. So if you want any demos on that, we can certainly show that for you. The other part is heart. It's all about value alignment. It's different than culture fit. Culture fit can be a bit of a hide behind the phrase, they are not like us. And it's the gladiator thing. What do you mean by that? Well, I just can't imagine going for beers on Friday with them. Okay, is that what you're hiring for? Is that the performance goal and objective? Successfully going out for beers? Or is it getting this job done? So you define each one of these, head, heart, and briefcase. And that's how you then do the overlay of, I'm looking for these three things to the seat. So, alrighty, I am going to hand back over to Scott because he's great with the numbers.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm going to zoom back down into some of the numbers here. And, the job performance indicators are not what you think. I think we all, and speaking for myself, I have made a number of hiring decisions over my career using poor predictors. And what you realize is there's two top predictors that are very statistically very important. One is structured interviews, and the second is a good behavioral and cognitive tool. And the two of those combined can give you in the 80+ or 90+% predictive success. So we, as Jonathan mentioned, we use the predictive index. So if you go to the next slide, Jonathan. As he mentioned, we use the predictive index. It works for a lot of different industries, and you can see some of the big names up there, and it's a global tool. The concept here is there's other tools out there, very good tools, including the predictive index. You're going to want to get something that is focused on work behaviors, not just personalities, something where you can get a job pattern. And so whether it's predictive index or another tool, get a tool is a key concept there. When we look at the whole person, we want to first start by, we have a job, or we have an opportunity rather. And how do we start? So the first part is the head requirements. So this is where the tool comes in. And as you can see on the slide, there's a pattern there for this particular job. And that's important. The other important concept here is get your team involved in it. Get on the same page. What we see oftentimes with many of our clients is really there's a lack of alignment. And that is not a negative. That's a good thing. That's something where there's opportunity for discussion. What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? We've had a tons of great discussion in determining what that pattern should be, but you need a tool to help you with that. On the heart component, as you can see, we're big into defined values, culture alignments. We like to call it live values, not just maybe the values that are in the office posted on the wall, but really every organization has live values. What are they? Because you want to match what your live values are to the candidates. And then we get to the briefcase, which again is your background, skills, and experience. There's two key concepts here, which is what are the competencies? And then the second component is what Jonathan mentioned earlier. What are the top 3 to 5 quantifiable business objectives that 1 year out, we can measure whether this was a successful hire or not? Mm-hmm. So those are just, it's really important to do this ahead of your recruiting efforts. So then we start our recruiting efforts and we get some good candidates. Now we want to evaluate them. So how does this work? The head component is, as we mentioned before, we want to compare it to the job pattern. And that's something that you've done. And so it's a little tough to read on this. We'll send out the slides and this information to you later. But you want to know what kind of match is this? How does this correlate from, again, not a personality, but a work behavior? On the heart side, we do, just to share, we do a great exercise internally with Titus as we hire recruiters. One of the things that we want to see is their verbal skills as well as their written skills. So we ask them to find 2 Titus employees, interview them on our live values. That gives us a great opportunity to share with them, here are their live values, and then we can follow up and say, how does that match yours? Mm-hmm. And is there a fit there? Is there alignment there? If not, that's okay, but it's just not going to be a fit for this particular organization, for our organization. There's some other great tools out there. All of us, I think, know Simon Sinek, Getting to the Inner Why. That's there's some great heart stuff in that. I won't go into too much details there. And then the behavioral tools, the good behavioral tools out there like Predictive Index will actually give you a ton of really good heart questions to ask, as well as briefcase questions. So those tools can be helpful in these areas. As we move into the briefcase, just a few thoughts or tips here. We like to really dig into why they changed organizations and peel that onion back and really understand why they, what drove them to make that move. Another one is, who did they report to? A lot of people ask about reference checks, which we learned earlier aren't a great predictor. But one of the things that is helpful is you can ask, who did they report to? And how long? Write those down. Those are the people you want to potentially speak with, or you might know, or somebody can connect you. So one of the things here is that we have found is force yourself to issue a score. It makes you become objective. So often the whole interview process is very emotional, and it's, I like this person, and we really need to ask ourselves, is that the right question? Do I like this person? It's no. You need them to perform a role, as Jonathan mentioned earlier. So this whole process, we actually have a training that's a 3-hour training that we have SHRM credits for people that care about that. I'm not going to go into those details today, but it really, really takes the emotion out and is a very, very helpful process. So I'm going to turn it back to Jonathan, who's going to give you a few more concepts, and then we'll go into some Q&A.
Great, thanks, Scott. So I'm going to give you the world's best interview question, in our humble opinion. And so get ready. You want to write this down, and because I would imagine that many of you are going to be sitting in some type of an interview and interviewing some candidate here. The slide, you've got a few concepts that we teach and train in our Hire for Performance workshops, as Scott mentioned. And so, which is great for hiring leaders around hiring, and it's great for human resources around building process, and so they can train the trainee. But the world's best interview question is this, ready? And it comes down to, you can only ask this question if you've done everything we've just explained. Defining the job by performance. So you got let's say you've got 3 major quantifiable performance objectives that you know need to get done for success to be determined. And so you got them very, very clear. It's like, grow the company bottom line by 5%. How will they do that? They're going to do this, this, and this. Okay, great. So it's really, really clear. And you know what are some of the obstacles will be to get this job done, because that's part of the process that we teach. So okay, I know the obstacles, I know what needs to get done, I know how it needs to get done. Now I'm interviewing somebody that's sitting across from me. What's the interview question to determine this? Because if I'm just going to focus on what they have done and see if they've done the exact same thing, it might not be an A player. So what we ask, the question is this. Ready? Drum roll. What is your most significant career accomplishment? And when I ask this question, I say, take a few seconds to think about it. Don't just jump into it. This is your story, your most significant career accomplishment. And even if I asked every one of you here in this webinar today, you could think about it. There's probably a season of time, maybe as a project, maybe it was a job that you had in some organization. It may be something outside of your professional world and maybe in a volunteer capacity. And when I say most significant, it makes, what happens in that story is it's where most likely, and if you're thinking about it right now, it's where you became most alive. Where you felt most alive because you were using all of your strengths, that you were using the workplace behaviors that are natural to you, that it aligned with your values, and used skill sets that stretched and challenged you, that you proved that you could do something. Okay? I'm willing to bet, and I've worked with enough people when I've asked this question, that's what happened when the story comes about. So everyone has the story. Remember, they choose the story. It's not me asking, like, what would you do in a situation like this? Behavioral event type interviews, BEI interview questions. This is the world's most significant career accomplishment. Sorry, not the world's. What is your most significant career accomplishment? And so you decide, or the candidate decides the story. This is really important because it's their story, they should know it very well, and it's their most proud moment, the most significant moment in their career. And so they should know all of the details. And so when Scott says, this is where you get some of the references, absolutely. So we might go into the interview question. That's the one question. And then I'm going to spend 45 minutes on that one question. Because they start, I say, tell me the story then. Tee it up for me. What was the situation? So then they tell me the story, and I'm interested. What I'm listening for in that story are my 3 objectives. I know my job. I know the values that we live by. And so I'm going to hear and listen for those in there. So let's say it was my job was grow the bottom line of the company by 5%. Great. I want to hear how they've gone in and grown something. And is it comparative, maybe a smaller level than what we're dealing with? And then I'm trying to say, is it too big of a stretch for the story where they came most alive to come and tackle my problem? So it's really panning this thing out and stretching it out. And in that story, tell me about the biggest obstacle then. Who was the biggest challenge for you? And why were they a challenge? Remember, I'm hearing in their story, they came most alive. They had challenges in there. They overcame something. What did they overcome, and who did they overcome, and how did they overcome with that person? Was it in a way that matched our live values as an organization, the way they communicated, the way they handled. And what was the name of that person? Guess what? I'm going to call them, unless it's their current employer. Don't do that. That really messes with people. But if it's a previous story, then you call that person and say, hey, I was interviewing such and such for a project. And I was asking them a story, and they said, there was this time in history where this happened, and they mentioned you in their story as a supporting actor that was significant. Would you mind telling me what it was like working with this person? Now I know that they were the evil villain of the story, but I'm still going to call them anyway. I'm ready. I'm sober. I'm going to take that information in context, but I'm saying, oh, would you recommend, could you help me, if I was to work with this person, how would I best work with them? How would I best manage them? You're going to find some great gems in there, as opposed to somebody's normal references where they might say, here are the 3 people I want you to call. So you pull these people out of their story, and that's where you're going to get your references from. So the most significant career accomplishment is a great question that you can unpack to find your major objectives and your lived values or your core values in their story. Or you might scorecard them and say, not a fit. They really struggled in these areas. I think they're going to need some scaffolding around them if we were to hire them. So hire with your head, not with your gut. Go in eyes wide open. I do have a bit of a, I really like Richard Branson. Not everything about Richard Branson's life, but I love this quote where he says, clients don't come first, our employees come first. You take care of your employees, and they were the ones to take care of your clients. I turn that on its head a little bit and say, take care of your people or someone else will. And so my challenge to each one of you today is take care of your current people. It's not just about hiring. If you're hiring because you're losing people, take care of your people. And when we take care of them, we help them find growth, stretch, and see impact. And when you're recruiting, it's exactly the same concept. Help them see growth, stretch, and impact. And that's how you hire an A player, by defining what you need to get done and then wooing those people into the organization. So thank you for joining us today. We are opening up for some Q&A. But while we do that, what you can do here is we have some great giveaways for you. So I appreciate Greg and Scott here. But if you just open up the camera on your phone and you point it at this screen here, automatically, if you're not familiar with QR codes, automatically it will open up a web page automatically, and you can, on your phone, you can give us any information you want here, but there's a few offers for you. One is, I'd like more information on the Hire for Performance workshop for my team or hiring managers. I would like to learn more about the cognitive and behavioral analytics that Titus uses. I would like to connect with Titus to discuss my organization's talent or people strategy. Or lastly, I have a critical hiring need and I'd like to discuss it with somebody at Titus. So those are 4 things there. Obviously, if you fill this out, I should say, obviously, if you fill that thing out, we'll automatically send you a copy of this deck because you may want to share it with somebody else along with the recording. But okay, Q&A.
Yeah, Jonathan, we've got one in, and it matches something that I wrote down too. But the question is, how do you avoid bringing your own bias to the heart section of the interview? And my example is, I recently watched an interview where a boomer's interviewing a millennial, and they're on 2 of those different levels. And so how do you avoid biasing your decision for making a good hire with your own opinions?
Oh, that's a great question. First of all, it's a fact we all have bias, okay? It's the first thing we need to do with bias is recognize we have bias. The next is going, okay, let us define what is needed. This whole head, heart, briefcase concept can massively help with dealing with bias. So it's benchmarking what are behaviors, benchmarking cognitive, benchmarking saying what are these values and what do those values look like by way of behaviors, and benchmarking what needs to get done in the job. So and then in becoming aware of your own bias, and I thought it was a great slide when Scott talked about education. So where you went to school is 1% predictive of on-the-job performance. I believe that was the number. Maybe it's a little bit higher, but GPA 12%. Those are all biases that we have. So if you went to Marquette, there is a bias that you have when somebody went to Marquette. Oh, we went to Marquette. So it causes in the interview, like, oh, we got some history and story together. Oh, it's so-and-so there. So, who was your teacher in that? And, oh, you were there before my time or after my time. And we get this feeling, we feel the endorphins, the warm feelings of pleasure, of familiarity. That's a bias. And the more you become aware of those biases that you have, it'll help you in the interview process. The other thing we can do, dealing with bias, is have an interview panel and have a diverse panel of people from different backgrounds, walks of life, experiences, and all the different dimensions of diversity as we know that are out there. If you want help on this on our website under learning or training. There's a whole section on dealing with bias when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion as well in the hiring process. But using a valid psychometric assessment, it's a bit of a mouthful, massively helps with one of these areas of bias as well. So good question. I can talk more on that and unpack that. But being aware of what your biases are is a good place to start.
It's always the first step in a program.
It is.
Talk about how this process might help with your current engagement of your staff.
Yeah, that's a big one, and it's something that we have to constantly keep updated. So we have these things called quarterly conversations. We have regular one-on-ones with our team members. All the managers have regular one-on-ones, and they're talking about the normal one-on-one type of stuff, how their job's going, how we're helping them, how we're serving them, what community obstacles we remove from them so they can get their goals and objectives done. But quarterly conversations where we analyze all of these things from our live values, how are they doing in those? We look at the scoreboard of how they're doing towards their performance goals and objectives. So we're really, really clear on that. Look at anything that we can do to remove any obstacles for them to help serve them. And then we also look at career growth and development. And we call it alignment. Are they aligned to the job? Do they get the job? Do they want that job? Do they have the capacity to do that job? And then next is what's next? What are we helping prepare them for? So we say some things like, we always want to prepare you for your next promotion or your next job, and we hope it's with us. So we recognize that people move on, a part of their journey, but we want to prepare them for their next challenge. And if the next challenge for them or the next job stretch for them just doesn't fit with our company because they happen to have a passion for something which is outside of what our mission is, that's okay. We can talk about that. We're not kicking them off the bus at that point. We're saying, hey, you stay on to your next stop. It's fine. But we're always looking to how do we grow and develop our people. You have to be really intentional about that. Really intentional. So we keep that in essentially a system, a performance management system, which is all around coaching for the next level. And so we have a whole a software platform which our clients are able to use as well, which is helping them on a coaching tool essentially. So
very good.
Yeah.
This one's maybe for Scott. Scott, how do you get down to the real values and not have somebody answer the questions the way they view the interviewer would like them to be answered?
Yeah, good question. This is where, as Jonathan mentioned during your most significant accomplishment, tell me about a time you did X. And you can start to peel back. So were you responsible for that? Was it a team effort? If, for example, if you're looking for someone who can play well in a team, but they're answering I on all of their, situations. I did this, I did that, it wasn't team. That's probably something you've got to be careful about. So really, that's one thing that significant accomplishment would be one area. Another area is just to ask them for specific examples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And tell me about a time when you did servanthood. And you'll stump people who haven't done that. So that would be the second part to that question.
That's great.
Good. I don't see any other questions coming up, and I know we're right on time, but I have one final question, and I'll launch this one at Jonathan. Let's see. Let me make sure I get it right. Tell me about your most significant career accomplishment.
Oh, come on. Sadly, we're at time right now. It is 1:15 the hour. I want to respect everybody's time. See, people are dropping off already. Good question. Probably a story for over a beer. But
I think I'll take you up on that. So
yeah,
that sounds good.
Sounds good. Hey, well, thanks for everyone for coming.
Exactly. So hopefully this just gave you a taste of a few ideas that you can actually use. So, and I believe the deck will be sent out to all the people that signed up. So if not, contact me or contact Scott and Jonathan. Thank you very much for coming.